Good evening. Thank you all for joining us. Welcome to New York City Public Schools Beyond Access series. Impartial hearing orders, how do they get implemented? May 22nd, 2024. On the screen, there is a participant poll. Please take a moment if you have not done so already to indicate whether you are a parent, parent attorney, parent advocate, service provider or agency, school, New York City Public School employee, or other. Please note, this presentation was created to provide information to parents, parents represented by attorneys and advocates, and vendors regarding specific processes for the implementation of impartial hearing orders, but we welcome all participants to remain. At this time, we are going to end the poll. Thank you all. Next slide, please. Introduction. Now, I'll be providing an overview of what this session will involve. Once an impartial hearing order is issued by an impartial hearing officer and sent to New York City Public Schools, the process of implementation for awarded services and payments begins. The implementation unit, also known as IU, will talk about the steps that parents and parent representatives can take to support a smooth implementation process, including the submission of information and supporting documents. The Division of Financial Operations, Payables Office, also known as DFO PO, will talk about the steps that vendors can take to support the payment process for services, including the submission of invoices. Tonight, there will be two presenters, myself, Shakia Flanori, including myself, Shakia Flanori, Senior Director of Compliance in the Impartial Hearing Order Implementation Unit under the Office of the General Counsel, Special Education Case Management. I am a female wearing a beige blazer and blouse with a blue background. The implementation unit is responsible for the compliance and account management of impartial hearing orders, as well as pendency agreements, pendency forms, and pendency forms. In addition, IU manages all reimbursements and tuition payments. And now I'm turning it over to my co-presenter, Frank Lenore.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Frank Lenore. I am the Chief Administrator for Payable Operations within the Division of Financial Operations, Payables Office. And the Payables Office receives vendor invoices for services only and processes payments so independent service providers based on the funding parameters set forth in the authorization.
Back to me, Shakia. New York City Public Schools do process payment mechanisms. There are various payment mechanisms during the special education litigation process, including resolution agreements, settlement agreements, pay memos, and impartial hearing orders. Today's session, we will focus only on the payment of impartial hearing orders. What is an impartial hearing order? Parents of students with disabilities who are involved in a dispute about special education issues with New York City Public Schools can request a due process hearing, which is one of the ways that the dispute can be resolved. Like a trial, impartial hearings can end with a decision that is issued by an impartial hearing officer from the Office of Administrative Trials and Hearings, also known as OATH, and New York State Education Department, also known as NYSET, per diem hearing officers. And now we'll share some recent updates to the impartial hearing order implementation process. LV order. In recent years, New York City Public Schools have received an increase in due process complaint filings. On July 19, 2023, the federal court issued an order requiring New York City Public Schools to make widespread improvements to support the implementation of impartial hearing orders. One of the mandates requires that New York City Public Schools will develop a continual process of updating training materials to reflect changing policies and business rules, including training and outreach to the public. That's what brought us here today. Recently, you may have seen some improvements that New York City Public Schools has made to the implementation and payment processes. Organizational changes. As a result of what I just discussed, there have been several organizational changes. First, formation of the Office of the General Counsel, Special Education Case Management, OGC SECM. Effective July 1st, 2023, the two offices responsible for the Please mute. Thank you. Effective July 1st, 2023, the two offices responsible for the administration and implementation of special education due process claims were consolidated under the Office of the General Counsel Special Education Case Management Unit. These offices are the Impartial Hearing Office, also known as IHO, which is responsible for the administration of due process hearings. The Impartial Hearing Order Implementation Unit, again also known as IU, is responsible for the implementation of impartial hearing orders. This restructuring brings the continuum of due process claims from initial intake to implementation of the order under the leadership of the Office of the General Counsel. Second, the work of the billing team has transitioned to the DFO Payables office. After considering stakeholder feedback and the court-appointed special master's guidance, New York City Public Schools reorganized the work of implementation to better serve students and families. As announced on April 5th, 2024, service payments have transitioned to the Payables office. The Payables office is responsible for receiving vendor invoices and processing payments to independent service providers based on the funding parameters in the authorization. There have also been some improvements to the implementation process. On October 2nd, 2023, IU issued the Help Us, Help You authorization and payment guide. The intended purpose of the Help Us, Help You guide is as titled, Help Us so that we can help you. The guide provides clarification about the information needed from parents and parent representatives during the implementation process and communicates the guidelines for document submission. Following the release of the Help Us Help You guide, we issued a community engagement survey for the authorization and payment guide. We received valuable feedback and we are in the process of updating the guide, and the new guide will be released soon. Continue improvements to the implementation process. As part of the April 5th, 2024 communication, we also provided guidelines for submitting an inquiry to the implementation unit and the Payables office, which streamline communication protocol with our respective offices, IU and DFO-PO. It also provided clarity about the information needed to better assist you. Continue improvements to the payment process. On April 24th, 2024, we released a report titled Introducing Impartial Hearing Order Monthly Vendor Report, which was a public notification about the rollout of a new monthly report to all payees. The goal of the report is to help with the reconciliation of payments by providing a detailed overview of all payments issued the prior month. The first report was issued on April 29th, 2024, containing payments issued during March 2024. As of May 7th, 2024, all payees receive monthly reports on the first Tuesday of each month. Please note, payees will only receive this report if payments were made to you in the prior month. And now I will provide some general information. The implementation process. The implementation process for prospective payment and reimbursement awards occurs through a three-step process handled by the following teams. Step 1, implementation unit. If the order requires New York City Public Schools to provide, my apologies, I'm jumping ahead. Step 1, the implementation unit. The compliance team analyzes and unpacks orders, identifying the actions required. Step 2, the implementation unit. The account management team verifies vendor information and supporting documents to set funding parameters for order services and programs. This administrative function is commonly referred to as the authorization process. The work of the compliance and account management teams, including tuition and all reimbursements, will continue operating within the implementation unit. Step 3, the Division of Financial Operations Payables Office, the billing team. The Payables Office receives vendor invoices and processes payments to independent service providers based on the funding parameters described above. Now I will get into more details about the Impartial Hearing Order Implementation Unit. Implementation Unit Workflow. Orders are issued by the Office of Administrative Trials and Hearings and New York State Education Department per diem hearing officers. Once the IU compliance team receives the order, again, they analyze and unpack the order and identify the actions required. The action items are entered into a New York City Public Schools tracking system. And this is the part that I was so excited to talk about. The implementation unit workflow continue. Action items are assigned based on what is required by the order. So 1, if the order requires New York City Public Schools to provide a service, the item is assigned to the implementation unit in the appropriate New York City Public Schools program office responsible for its implementation, such as transportation, nursing, etc. 2, if the order requires New York City Public Schools to make a payment, the item is assigned to the IU account management team to verify vendor information and supporting documents to set funding parameters for order services and programs. This administrative function is commonly referred to as the authorization process. What does the implementation unit need from parents and parent representatives? First, review the order. You should review the impartial hearing order and verify the details regarding reimbursement, prospective payments, direct payments, payment amounts, timelines, and any other requirements. Second, check the Help Us Help You authorization and payment guide. This guide contains a list of information and supporting documents that the implementation unit needs to process the authorization. And lastly, submit information and supporting documents. All documents submitted should be legible. The subject line of the email must include the student's full name, New York City ID number, also known as OSIS number, and impartial hearing case number. Once all required information and documents have been received, payment authorization will be initiated. You will receive an email confirming the approved funding parameters and other important information, and you meeting the service provider and those that are receiving reimbursements. And now I am turning it back over to my co-presenter.
Thank
With
you,
the division.
thank you, Shakia. So I am a white male wearing a light blue shirt, sitting in front of a blue background with the New York City Public School logo. And today I'm going to be discussing the payment workflow and what the requirements are to receive payment. The Payables Office workflow process payments to service providers. Vendor receives the authorization email. Vendor provides the service to the student. Vendor submits invoices to the Payables Office, and the Payables Office reviews the invoices and vouchers the payments. So what does the DFO Payables Office need from vendors? Well, number one, you need to confirm that you have received the authorization email. Vendors should confirm that they have received the authorization email for the period that they are seeking payment for services, for example, related services or evaluations rendered on a given case. And also review the details in the authorization email. Number two, invoice submissions. All documents submitted should be legible, for example, the timesheet. All fields in the timesheet must be filled out, including signatures. The subject line of the email must include the student's name, NYC ID number, also known as OSIS, and the impartial hearing case number. Vendors must copy the parent and the parent representative, if applicable, on their invoice submission. And finally, vendors should submit invoices to ihserviceinvoices@schools.nyc.gov. Number three, invoice form or timesheet. Vendors are required to use the vendor monthly service invoice for billing purposes. This form cannot be altered. To the maximum extent possible, please provide clean start and end times for each service by 5-minute increments. For example, the preferred format is 9:05 a.m. to 10:10 a.m. What's not preferred is 9:03 a.m. to 10:12 a.m. Number four, verify the accuracy of invoices. Please review all invoices for accuracy prior to submission. Verify the rates, session times, and number of sessions billed. Ensure all calculations are correct and that the numbers are legible. The number of sessions should be aligned to the mandated number of sessions in the order and the authorization email issued by the implementation unit. Failure to invoice properly may result in underpayments. For example, if the order and the authorization email indicate the provision of 30-minute sessions, then the invoice must be tallied to reflect the total number of 30-minute sessions provided and the rate for 30-minute sessions for a total amount due. The monthly vendor payment report. As Shakia mentioned earlier today, we have started to issue a monthly vendor payment report. All payees shall receive this payment report via email on the first Tuesday of each month, including parents who receive reimbursements, law firms that receive payments via escrow, schools, service providing agencies, and independent service providers. The report has a detailed overview of all payments and includes all of the following fields: vendor email, vendor name, DOE vendor number, case number, NYC ID number, student last name, student first name, pay type, service type description, authorization service start date, authorization service end date, payment service start date, payment service end date, voucher document number, document suffix, invoice and description, voucher post date, check issue date, check number, bank number, and transaction amount. I would also like to note that this report is not cumulative, and therefore we recommend that you either keep the email or save the attachment so you can reference it in the future if needed. And now I'm going to turn it back to Shakia, and she will talk about registering as a city payee.
Thank you, Frank. Register as a city payee. Any party who receives reimbursement or funding pursuant to an impartial hearing order must register as a payee with the City of New York, including parents, parents' representatives, vendors, and schools. The Direct Reimbursement Social Security Form, DR, also known as DRSS form, and W-9 form should be emailed to the assigned account specialist and CC IU authorization at schools.nyc.gov. The forms should be submitted as a single PDF with the following naming convention. For DRSS form, the naming convention should be case number, student name, name of payee. The W-9 form, provider name, and case number. For parents and parents' attorneys, parents who have never received any reimbursement from the City of New York must submit a DRSS form. Parents should also submit a DRSS form to update changes to their payment information. If the City of New York has previously paid you and there is no change to your payment information, then you do not need to submit a DRSS form. Note, these steps are not required if the parent's attorney accepts reimbursement on behalf of their client via escrow account. For vendors and schools, vendors and schools without a tax ID identification number, also known as TIN, must submit a substitute W-9 form. Once registered, the request is validated by the New York City Comptroller's Office. Vendors and schools will receive an email notification from the New York City Division of Contracts and Purchasing, the Vendor Setup Vendor Resources Unit, once the validation process is completed. Change of address. W-9 form, DRSS form, and change letter are required for any changes to a payee's account. The change letter should be on a company letterhead, if applicable. It must include the previous information, the new information, and a brief description of the modification. New York City Payee Information Portal, PIP, very important. All payees should create a PIP account to monitor payment approved in accordance with impartial hearing orders. Website link. The link will be dropped in the chat. So if you need to access this link, please look for it in the chat shortly. Payees who want to direct payments to a single bank account may enroll in EFT direct deposit using the PIP website. To check the status of an anticipated payment, access the PIP website. Direct deposit. For faster and more efficient payment processing, payees are strongly encouraged to enroll in direct deposit. Direct deposit is the most secure method to receive your payment and prevent loss or missing checks. Note, the issuance of paper check incurs a $3.50 processing fee by the City of New York. Direct deposits are not charged this fee. The most important section, helpful tips. Helpful tips, escrow accounts. To expedite payment reimbursements by up to 3 weeks, we highly recommend that attorneys accept reimbursements on behalf of their client via escrow account. Provided changes, compensatory bank extensions. When submitting a request to change providers or bank extensions, provide the previous provider's end date and hours used and the new provider's information, including tax identification number, rate, and start date. And 3, avoid submitting unnecessary documents. Do not submit copies of the impartial hearing orders. Our office already has access to all orders in our system. Common causes of processing delays, including unnecessary recipients in emails. It causes confusions as to who the intended recipient is and who should be responsive to the emails. Additional or follow-up emails should be sent on the same email thread as the initial email. Please do not start a new email for the same student, case number, and issue, as this may lead to confusion. And I am turning it back over to my co-presenter.
Submitting an inquiry to the implementation unit. Parents, is this the right slide? Parents representatives should be aware of their assigned IU account manager for authorization. The implementation unit, as an office with the New York City Public Schools Office of the General Counsel, will not be in contact with the vendors because vendors are not parties to the underlying due process complaint. Once the authorization is created, vendors will receive a notification. Submitting an inquiry to the implementation unit. For not yet authorized cases, the parent or parent's representative should email the IU account specialist, assign their caseload, and copy IU authorization at schools.nyc.gov. Before doing so, the parent's representative should confirm that there is an impartial hearing order or agreement that awards the service and service period for which payment is sought. If your inquiry is for tuition, reimbursement, and prospective tuition, these action items remain under the purview of the implementation unit. Tuition payment inquiries for authorized cases should be sent to IU tuition payments at schools.nyc.gov. Now, submitting an inquiry to DFO Payables office. For authorized cases, if the vendor has received the authorization email for the period in which they are seeking payment for services rendered on a given case, they should submit invoices to IH service invoices at schools.nyc.gov. If the vendor has not received the authorization email, they should coordinate with the parent's representative to ensure that the supporting documents for the authorization have been submitted and accepted. Vendors should use the monthly vendor payment report to reconcile their payments before submitting any inquiries to the Payables office. And here's some contact information. If your inquiry is about not yet authorized cases, you can email the implementation unit at iuauthorization@schools.nyc.gov. If your inquiry is about tuition payments, you can also email the implementation unit at iutuitionpayments@schools.nyc.gov. If your inquiry is about New York City Public School provided services, you can also email the implementation unit at ihoiumanagers@schools.nyc.gov. And if your inquiry is about authorized cases, you can email the Division of Financial Operations Payables office at ihserviceinvoices@schools.nyc.gov. When submitting your inquiries, please make sure you include the following: the student's full name, the NYC ID number or OSIS number, the impartial hearing order case number, and the office of origin. And these additional resources, these links will be put into the chat, and they are the New York City Public Schools website, the authorization and payment guide, the City of New York substitute W-9 form, the direct reimbursement Social Security form, the vendor monthly service invoice form, and the New York City Payee Information Portal, also known as PIP. I will now turn it back to Shakia for some closing comments.
Thank you, Frank. Do you mind going back to slide 45 just for a quick review to give the audience an opportunity to make sure that they got the correct contact information? Just so you have the option to ensure that you are able to get the email addresses. If the inquiry again is about not yet authorized cases, it should go to the implementation unit, IU authorization at schools.nyc.gov, tuition payment implementation unit, again, IU tuition payments at schools.nyc.gov. For New York City Public Schools provided services, the implementation unit, IHOIU managers at schools.nyc.gov. And for authorized cases for services, the Division of Financial Operations, Payables Office, IH services, service invoices at schools.nyc.gov. And you can bring us back to the final slide. Thank you all for joining us this evening. We welcome your feedback. Please scan the QR code so that you can complete the survey. We will also drop the link in the chat so you are able to access it. If you cannot access it via the QR code, we will put the link in the chat. Thank you. And the email addresses are also provided in the chat. This is your time to share your feedback. As we prepare for upcoming sessions, we would take all of your feedback into consideration.
Shakia, thank you. Let me know when you would like for me to conclude today's session.
Okay, we just want to give them another minute or two to
Okay.
make sure they are able to access the survey.
Okay.
Thank you, Rochelle.
You're welcome.
Please, again, complete the feedback survey. And good evening. And those who are traveling home, please arrive safely. Rochelle, I think we can close at this time. Thank you. Thank you to my co-presenter, Frank Lenore.
Thank you, Shakia. Thank you, Frank. Thank you, everyone, for attending. This concludes today's Beyond Access series session. Have a good evening.
Have a great evening, everyone.